"Sir, don't go near that old tree. There's something inside." My husky's frantic barks echoed through the park, her blue eyes wild with a desperation I'd never seen before, piercing the twilight like signals from a distant storm. But when the police finally peered into that dark hollow, what they uncovered froze us all in a wave of heartbreaking truth that lingered long after the lights faded. "Hey, buddy, come sit with me a minute. I've got this story that's been weighing on my heart for years now, the kind that sneaks into your quiet moments uninvited and reminds you how deep loyalty can run, even when life tries to bury it under layers of pain, forgotten time, and the relentless march of ordinary days. It's personal, the sort of tale that started as an ordinary evening walk through familiar paths and ended up reshaping how I see the world around me, pulling me out of my own fog of lingering regrets and into something warmer, more connected, like sunlight breaking through after a long rain. Picture an old city park on the edge of town, the kind with winding gravel paths lined by ancient oaks and maples that have stood sentinel through generations of picnics, proposals, and quiet reflections, their massive branches forming a natural canopy that filters the sunset into soft, golden patches, dancing on the ground like scattered memories. That's where I was that crisp fall evening about 5 years back, when everything shifted in ways I could never have anticipated, turning a routine stroll into the pivot point of my healing. My name's Tom, and at 45, I'd settled into a predictable routine in this mid-sized city in the Midwest, working as a high school history teacher by day, grading stacks of essays and lecturing on long-forgotten events that shaped nations and lives, drawing parallels to the personal histories my students carried unspoken in their eyes, and by night, just trying to keep the creeping loneliness at bay in my small second-floor apartment overlooking the park's eastern boundary. Life hadn't turned out quite like I'd planned back in my 20s, full of big dreams and easy laughs. My wife, Clara, had passed suddenly from a rare illness that doctors called aggressive and untreatable, leaving me with a daughter who was grown and off at college across the state, sending occasional texts but building her own world, and a quiet, persistent ache in my chest that made small talk with colleagues or neighbors feel like wading through thick mud, every step exhausting. I wasn't one for crowds or the awkward swipes of dating apps, too much effort for too little genuine spark, too many reminders of what I'd lost, so my evening walks with my dog became my anchor, a simple, grounding way to breathe deeply, let the day's accumulated weight slip off my shoulders like an old coat, and reconnect with the rhythm of the world beyond my four walls. Her name was Luna, a beautiful Siberian husky I'd adopted from a local shelter 3 years before that fateful walk, right after my daughter moved out and the apartment started feeling too echoey, its silence amplifying the absence like a hollow drum. Huskies like her have that striking, almost ethereal look that turns heads, thick silver-gray fur with pristine white accents along her underbelly and paws that made her stand out like a graceful ghost gliding through the twilight. Those piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets from the frozen Arctic wilds where her ancestors roamed, and a curled tail that wagged with a subtle, independent flair, never frantic, but always expressive. She wasn't overly needy or clingy like some smaller breeds that demand constant attention. No, Luna embodied that classic husky spirit, adventurous and alert to every shift in the air, with a vocal howl that could carry for blocks and turn strangers into temporary admirers, her throat vibrating with a melody that echoed the calls of sled teams across Siberian plains. We'd bonded quickly during those early tentative days after adoption. I'd find her curled contentedly by my feet while I graded papers at the kitchen table, her head tilting curiously to one side as I shared snippets of my history lessons on ancient explorers and their faithful sled dogs, as if she intuitively understood the tales of endurance, pack loyalty, and unyielding companionship bred into her very bones over centuries of harsh survival. Our evening walks through the park were sacred rituals we both cherished. Me tossing a worn tennis ball for her to chase with that explosive burst of speed, unique to her athletic build. Her powerful paws kicking up colorful leaves in joyful swirling arcs that painted the air with autumn's palette, and us both pausing by the old stone fountain to watch the ducks skim gracefully across the still pond, their ripples mirroring the peace we found in those moments. She taught me to notice the little, often overlooked things again, like the intricate way frost etched delicate patterns on park benches during early winter mornings, or how the wind carried faint intriguing scents that made her keen nose twitch in focused excitement, drawing her forward with purpose. That connection we shared? It was quiet, but profoundly real, pulling me gently from the isolation Clara's untimely loss had wrapped around me like a shroud, reminding me in her steady presence that companionship didn't always need elaborate words or grand gestures. Sometimes it was just the comfort of walking side by side, tails wagging in sync. That particular evening started like any other in our routine, the crisp autumn air nipping gently at my cheeks as the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the expansive sky in rich hues of orange, purple, and deepening indigo, the park alive with the winding down of daily life. Joggers slowing their pace after long runs, families gathering picnic blankets after lingering dinners under the trees, and distant laughter fading as folks headed home to warm lights. Luna trotted ahead confidently on her sturdy leather leash, her silver coat catching the fading golden light in shimmering highlights. Her ears perked alert to every subtle rustle in the nearby bushes or flutter of wings overhead. We were nearing the eastern edge of the park, where the main path curved gracefully around a cluster of massive, gnarled trees, centuries-old oaks that locals affectionately called the Whispering Grove, for the way their dense leaves murmured secrets in even the slightest breeze, their trunks scarred by lightning strikes and the passage of time. One tree stood out prominently among them, a true behemoth with a trunk wider than 3 grown men could encircle arm in arm, its bark twisted and furrowed like ancient runes etched by forgotten hands, and a prominent hollow at the base where relentless years and weather had carved out a dark, yawning cavity about 3 feet high and just as deep, shadowed even in daylight. I'd passed it hundreds of times without giving it a second thought over the years. Neighborhood kids dared each other to peek inside during Halloween adventures, whispering tales of hidden treasures or resident spirits. But to me, it was just an empty scar in the wood, a natural quirk in an otherwise timeless landscape, or so I figured without deeper curiosity. Luna, though? She froze abruptly about 10 yards out from it, her lean body going rigid in an instant, hackles rising along her back in a sharp ridge of silver fur that made her appear twice her usual size, a defensive posture honed from her breed's history of guarding sled routes against predators. Her vivid blue eyes locked unblinkingly on that foreboding hollow, intense and unwavering, and a low, guttural growl rumbled from deep within her chest. Deep, urgent, and laced with warning, the kind of primal sound huskies reserve for genuine threats, not the playful squirrels or fleeting shadows that usually caught her interest. "Luna, easy girl, what's got you spooked?" I said softly, giving a gentle tug on her leash to draw her back, but she planted her paws firmly into the leaf-strewn ground, muscles taut and quivering under her thick coat, refusing to budge an inch, and let out a sharp, piercing bark that sliced through the evening's serene quiet like a knife. It wasn't her usual playful yip during games of fetch. This was desperate, insistent, echoing off the surrounding trees and carrying a raw edge that set my nerves on alert, reverberating in the cooling air. Her tail, usually curled in relaxed confidence during our walks, tucked slightly against her hindquarters as she strained forward against the leash, her black nose quivering rapidly toward the dark opening, inhaling scents invisible to me. I knelt down beside her on the damp path, running a reassuring hand along her warm flank to try and calm her rising agitation. Her fur felt soft and insulating under my palm, but she trembled visibly, those vivid blue eyes pleading up at me with an intensity that twisted my gut into knots, conveying a message I couldn't yet decipher. Huskies are remarkably intuitive creatures like that. They're pack animals through and through, with senses sharpened by generations of pulling heavy sleds across unforgiving frozen tundras and alerting handlers to dangers long before humans could perceive them. A trait documented in real accounts from early 20th century Arctic expeditions, where dogs like her saved lives with timely warnings. What is it, huh? Just a rabbit hole or some critter hiding out? I murmured to her, trying to inject calm into my voice, even as doubt began to creep in like fog off the pond. But even as the words left my lips, a chill unrelated to the evening breeze prickled my skin. She broke free then, in a sudden fluid motion, slipping her collar with a clever shake of her masked head, a classic husky escape artist move I'd seen her pull during energetic zoomies back at the apartment, and lunged directly toward the tree, her claws scrabbling furiously at the leaf-strewn ground near the exposed roots, digging with a frantic, determined energy that sent clods of dark earth and decaying foliage flying in all directions, her breaths coming in sharp pants. That's when I heard it for the first time. A faint, muffled knocking, emanating from deep inside the hollow like knuckles rapping weakly against hollow wood from within, irregular but deliberate, pausing and then resuming as if testing for response. My heart slammed hard in my chest, a thunderous rhythm drowning out the distant hum of traffic. The park wasn't entirely empty yet, with a few lingering strollers in the distance, but no one else seemed to notice the odd disturbance, their voices and footsteps fading into the encroaching dusk. "Luna, stop! Hey, come back here!" I called out urgently, lunging to grab her loose collar before she could burrow deeper, but she whined plaintively, pressing her muzzle insistently into the yawning opening, barking again with a rising pitch that bordered on her signature howl, her entire body language screaming urgency and insistence, paws still churning the soil. Panic bubbled up, hot and fast in my throat. This wasn't normal behavior for her, not even on her most alert days. This felt orchestrated, purposeful, like she was guiding me to an unavoidable truth. I fumbled for my phone with one hand while holding her collar with the other, dialing 911 with shaking fingers that nearly dropped the device, explaining the bizarre, escalating scene to the calm dispatcher on the other end, while Luna continued to paw relentlessly at the base, her blue eyes flicking back to me repeatedly as if begging me to trust her instincts and act. There's something wrong with this tree in the park. My dog won't stop barking at it, digging like crazy, and I swear I hear knocking coming from inside, like someone's trapped or I don't know. The operator stayed professional and reassuring, promising officers would be en route shortly, advising me to stay back and keep the area clear. But as I waited there crouched by that ancient looming trunk, the weight of Luna's devotion hit me with full force. She wasn't just reacting on instinct. She was protecting our pack, guiding me toward whatever hidden truth lay buried in the shadows, her husky loyalty shining through like a steadfast beacon cutting through the gathering dusk, illuminating paths I hadn't known were dimmed. The police arrived in under 10 minutes, their cruiser pulling up to the path's edge with a crunch of tires on gravel, 2 officers emerging in their crisp Navy uniforms, flashlights already drawn and trained steadily on us as they approached with measured caution, scanning the scene under the deepening twilight. The younger one, a guy named Ramirez with a neatly trimmed mustache that twitched slightly when he offered a reassuring nod, took the lead, his voice steady but alert. "Sir, step back a bit. Let us handle this for now. Keep your dog under control if you can." Luna growled low at first, instinctively positioning her sturdy frame between me and the tree, her protective instincts flaring bright. Huskies are renowned for their fierce guardianship of their chosen pack, a trait passed down from their wolfish ancestors who defended sled teams against bears and wolves in the wild north. But she quieted almost immediately when I knelt down beside her and whispered soothingly, "It's okay, girl. Good job alerting us. You did right." Ramirez shone the beam of his flashlight directly into the hollow's maw. It swallowed the light greedily, revealing only pitch blackness and the faint glint of roots twisting inward. But then the knocking resumed. Fainter this time, but unmistakable, like an echo struggling from another world buried deep. The older officer, Jenkins, a veteran with deep lines etched into his weathered face from years pounding the beat through rain and riots alike, radioed immediately for backup and requested a chainsaw from the cruiser's trunk, his tone shifting to one of focused urgency. Could be an animal trapped in there, or worse, something human-related. "Stay put, folks." He eyed Luna's unwavering intensity with a mix of skepticism and respect, noting how she sat rigidly now, ears forward and alert, watching every one of their movements with those piercing blue eyes that never once left the tree, as if she knew, on some profound primal level tuned by her breed's history, exactly what was coming next and why it mattered. They worked methodically and with practiced efficiency, the chainsaw's guttural roar shattering the park's lingering peace as they carefully sectioned off a manageable portion from the trunk's side, just enough to widen the opening without risking the stability of the entire massive oak or disturbing potential evidence inside. Wood chips flew in fragrant bursts, the air filling thickly with the sharp, resinous tang of fresh sawdust mingling with something darker, more ominous, an underlying wave of decay that hit like a physical punch to the gut when the gash finally revealed the hollow's grim interior, wafting out in a cloying cloud that made my eyes water. I gagged involuntarily, covering my nose and mouth with my sleeve, the metallic hint of rot turning my stomach. But Luna didn't flinch or recoil. Instead, she whined softly from her spot at my feet, inching closer with deliberate steps, her sensitive nose twitching at the emerging scent as if confirming a long-held suspicion. Inside the cramped, root-entwined space, crammed awkwardly into the hollow's unforgiving confines, lay the skeletal remains of a man, tattered clothes reduced to ragged shreds clinging to brittle bones, the frame curled in a defensive fetal position as if he'd crawled in desperately seeking shelter from the elements, or perhaps hiding from an unseen pursuer in his final moments. Beside the remains, rusted to a dull, pitted patina from years of exposure, lay a worn pocket knife with its blade chipped and dulled, suggesting a tool for survival or last-ditch defense, and still clutched tightly in the skeletal fingers of one hand, a small, stuffed puppy toy, its once vibrant fabric faded to muted grays and browns, but with button eyes stitched in innocent black thread that stared blankly into the light. The officers froze in stunned silence for a beat, their faces draining of color under the flashlight beams, radios crackling to life with urgent calls for the forensics team, the coroner, and scene preservation units to respond immediately. "Jesus Christ," Ramirez whispered hoarsely, his voice barely above the hum of the idling cruiser, his face paling further as he took in the details. "This guy's been here a long time. Decades, maybe. Look at how the roots have grown right over the remnants of his shoes, weaving through the laces like nature's own seal." Luna whimpered then, a soft, keening sound that tugged at my heart, pressing her warm head firmly against my leg in a gesture of shared sorrow, her sturdy body trembling not from fear, but from something deeper, more visceral, a long overdue release of pent-up emotion she'd carried silently for years. I stroked her soft ears gently, murmuring comforts into her fur to steady us both, but my mind reeled in the chaos. The source of that knocking? Perhaps shifting gases from decomposition or the subtle settling of the wood over time, but her unerring certainty in leading us there. It was as if she'd sensed his presence all along, drawn by an invisible thread of loyalty that defied explanation. The park quickly filled with the staccato flash of emergency lights painting the trees in red and blue, yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze as investigators swarmed the area with kits and cameras. But Luna and I were ushered politely to the sidelines, our statements taken methodically under the harsh glow of portable floodlights that banished the night. Hours later, back home in the apartment with the door securely locked against the world's intrusion, and her curled protectively at my feet on the living room rug, the late-night news alert buzzed on my phone. The remains had been tentatively identified as belonging to Daniel Hayes, a local handyman reported missing exactly 10 years prior during a stormy autumn night much like this one, his case gone cold amid hundreds of unsolved files, and the stuffed toy clutched so tightly. It was a cherished keepsake from his young daughter, a gift tied to the puppy she'd begged him for endlessly but never received before his disappearance shattered their family. But the real, soul-shaking gut punch came the very next day, when two plainclothes detectives knocked on my door, their expressions a mix of professional detachment and quiet awe. If you found this story helpful, please give it a 1 in the comments. If not, give it a 0. Your response will let me know if my story helped anyone. Turns out, after piecing together shelter records, witness accounts, and forensic traces from the scene, Daniel had owned a husky much like Luna, a female with the same striking silver-gray coat and vivid blue eyes that mirrored the northern lights her breed evoked in folklore. She'd been found wandering disoriented through the park just weeks after his sudden vanishing, emaciated from hunger but miraculously alive, with no collar or tags to identify her origins, her paws raw from endless pacing. The shelter had named her Shadow for her elusive ways, but she'd been adopted out twice to hopeful families before slipping away each time, going feral again and surviving on scavenged scraps, and her innate husky resilience, always circling back inexorably to that same whispering grove in the park. For 10 full years she'd roamed those paths and woods, a ghost in her own right, until a compassionate volunteer finally coaxed her into the shelter once more, where her wary but enduring spirit caught my eye during a routine visit. DNA analysis from fur samples still clinging to the weathered stuffed toy confirmed it without doubt. Luna was indeed Shadow, Daniel's devoted companion, returning faithfully year after year to the very tree where he'd met his tragic end, perhaps trapped by a fatal fall into the hollow during his flight, or whatever peril had claimed him. Her barks and scratches a final act of remembrance that refused to let him fade into oblivion. The rusted knife suggested possible foul play, ties to old debts or disputes uncovered in the reopened case files, but her persistent vigils? They'd ensured he wasn't forgotten forever. Her loyalty, a bridge across a decade of silence. That staggering revelation hit me like a sudden summer storm, buddy, rolling in with thunder that shook the foundations of everything I'd assumed about our quiet life together. I'd always sensed Luna's connection to the park ran deeper than mere territory, how she'd pull gently but insistently toward the grove during our walks, whining softly under her breath with a husky timbre that carried longing, or sit motionless for minutes staring at that particular tree with those knowing blue eyes, as if communing with echoes only she could hear. Huskies possess that remarkable long-term memory and unyielding loyalty ingrained in their DNA. Ancient stories from Siberian villages speak of them guarding family graves for entire lifetimes, howling mournfully on anniversaries to honor the departed, a cultural thread woven into the fabric of indigenous lore, where dogs were seen as spiritual guides. Our bond deepened immeasurably in the wake of that truth. What had been casual walks transformed into purposeful pilgrimages to the site. Me opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone since Clara, sharing raw stories of my wife's infectious laugh during our early hikes, How her illness had stolen our shared plans for travel and family like a thief in the night, leaving me adrift in a sea of what-ifs that carved hollows in my soul, much like that ancient tree's cavity. You get it, don't you, Luna? That unbreakable pull to remember, to honor what was lost no matter how much time passes. I'd say softly during those pauses, my voice blending with the rustle of leaves. Luna would sit attentively beside me, her ears cocked forward in that classic husky pose of engagement, her blue eyes reflecting a quiet understanding that drew out my most buried pains, her subtle lean into my side a wordless affirmation of shared compassion. One drizzly afternoon, as sodden leaves plastered the path in a mosaic of red and gold, she lay down peacefully by the trunk, her whine softening to a contented sigh. I knelt beside her in the mist, and she licked my hand gently, a gesture that felt like forgiveness for the years I'd spent numb and withdrawn, extending that kindness back to me in waves. Challenges arose naturally in the aftermath, testing the resilience of our evolving partnership without breaking it. A series of vivid nightmares that plagued Luna in the months following, where she'd jolt awake from her bed in the corner with sudden barks aimed at empty shadows on the walls, her body tense and quivering as if reliving the trauma of those lost years. Or my own creeping doubts that surfaced during sleepless nights, wondering if I'd truly honored her past enough, or if adopting her had been selfish, pulling her from her vigil. But amid those trials, moments of profound clarity began to bloom unexpectedly, like wildflowers pushing through cracked pavement. One misty dawn, as the first light gilded the plaque now affixed to the tree in Daniel's memory, she rested her head on my knee with uncharacteristic calm, her blue eyes soft and accepting, as if conveying that we'd given him the peace he deserved through our discovery, her husky endurance teaching me the value of presence over perfection. Therapy sessions became a regular part of our routine after that, with Luna accompanying me to the counselor's office, her steady, grounding presence by my side on the waiting room floor, her calm demeanor a silent anchor as I unpacked the layers of Clara's absence, the hospital vigils, the final goodbyes whispered in sterile rooms, finding glimmers of hope in small, tangible acts, like adopting a young rescue pup from the same shelter a year later, a scruffy mix that Luna took under her wing with gentle woofs and patient nudges, mothering him in ways that mirrored the family bonds she'd once known. Of course, life threw its curves to keep things real. Media attention swelled briefly after the story broke in local papers, dubbing Luna the hero hound of the hollow with photos of her poised by the tree. But she shied from the spotlight, her independent husky streak emerging in wary growls at unfamiliar faces crowding our space, prompting me to shield her with early morning walks and closed curtains. Through it all, her loyalty remained my compass. During a rough patch at work when budget cuts threatened my teaching position, she'd sense my tension, curling closer on the couch with her head in my lap, her rhythmic breathing a reminder of compassion's quiet power, much like real-life accounts from therapy dog programs where huskies visit hospitals, their intuitive empathy helping patients forgive their pains and embrace renewal. Daniel's daughter, now a young woman with her father's eyes, reached out eventually, visiting the park with stories of her childhood puppy dreams, tears flowing as she petted Luna's silver fur, their reunion a bridge of healing that mended fractures across a decade. Years have passed since that barking shattered the silence, and Luna's steps have slowed with age, her once explosive energy tempered to gentle trots, her silver muzzle now threaded with white like fresh snow on a familiar trail. But her blue eyes still spark with that fierce, unwavering love that first drew me to her. That old tree, once a forgotten tomb hiding sorrows, now stands as a living testament to bonds that refuse to break, no matter the storms or silences, leaving me forever grateful for the loyalty that uncovered hidden truths and healed the hollows in us both. A warm, enduring light that glows softly in the heart's quietest corners, promising that connection always finds a way back. But let me back up a touch, because that profound, life-altering bond we forged didn't blossom overnight in a rush of dramatic revelations or heartfelt speeches. It unfolded gradually, layer by layer, like the patient turning of seasons in the park itself, each phase revealing more of Luna's resilient spirit and the vulnerabilities I'd kept locked away since Clara's passing. In the immediate weeks following the chaotic discovery and the swirl of police tape and flashing lights that had transformed our serene grove into a temporary spectacle, life in the apartment took on a charged, almost electric rhythm, every corner humming with the unspoken history we'd unearthed together. Luna's subtle habits intensified during those early days, her once casual glances toward the park's direction now lingering longer from the balcony windows. Her husky howls at dusk, carrying a deeper, more resonant timbre that seemed to echo the mournful calls from Siberian legends where dogs guided lost souls across vast, icy expanses to safety. I'd join her there in the fading light, leaning against the railing with a mug of herbal tea steaming in my hands. Chamomile, Clara's favorite for unwinding, and share fragments of my own buried narratives. Tales of my wife's vibrant garden where she'd hum old folk tunes while planting rows of sunflowers that towered like sentinels, dreams of family adventures cut tragically short by illness's cruel hand. Loss has a way of trapping you in places you can't see a way out of, like that dark hollow in the tree. But somehow you found your path back, didn't you, Luna? I'd confide softly, my voice blending with the distant murmur of evening traffic. Her responsive lean against my leg, warm and reassuring through her plush coat, became a conduit for comfort, building an unshakable trust that encouraged me to confront my isolation head-on, much like documented cases from animal-assisted therapy, where huskies' empathetic natures help veterans process PTSD by mirroring emotional cues without judgment. One particularly crisp October morning, as the first frost sparkled on the grass like scattered diamonds, and the air held the sharp scent of wood smoke from neighborhood chimneys, we paused during our ritual walk at the tree's base, now cordoned but accessible for reflection. The newly installed plaque caught the rising sun, its engraved words gleaming, "Daniel Hayes, remembered forever by a faithful friend, uncovered, 2023. Luna sniffed it methodically, her nose tracing the letters with a soft whine that carried finality and peace. I knelt in the chilled dew, my breath visible in puffs, tears blurring the inscription as I whispered, "You brought him home after all this time, girl. Thank you for showing me how to honor the lost." Her gentle nuzzle against my cheek in response, it felt like a profound act of forgiveness, extending compassion for the solitary years I'd wandered much like she had, her husky empathy flowing both ways in a cycle that began to fill the voids Clara's absence had left. Winter arrived with its familiar hush, blanketing the park in a pristine layer of snow that muffled footsteps and turned the grove into a serene, white-draped sanctuary. Luna's coat thickening naturally like a built-in parka to ward off the chill, her endurance a nod to her breed's origins in sub-zero sled runs across Alaska's trails. Storms confined us indoors for days on end, her curling contentedly by the radiator's warmth while I delved into books on sled dog history, tales of Balto's heroic serum run in 1925, where a team's loyalty saved Nome from diphtheria, or Togo's lesser-known but equally vital endurance over 260 miles, reading aloud in low tones as she rested her head on my knee. "Just like you saved Daniel's memory from being lost forever," I'd say, drawing parallels that strengthened our narrative thread, her occasional tail thump against the floor, a subtle agreement that echoed through the room. Grief counseling sessions deepened during those long nights, Luna's calm, watchful presence in the therapist's office affirming my progress as I unpacked Clara's final days. The beeping monitors, the hand squeezes in dim hospital rooms, releasing guilt in measured waves, hope emerging in incremental joys, like her playful theft of wool socks for impromptu tug-of-war games, her husky mischief lightening the emotional loads we both carried. Spring's tentative thaw brought renewal in tangible waves, the world outside bursting with the drip of melting icicles and the vibrant push of crocuses through snowmelt mud. Luna's energy surging anew as we extended our romps along greening paths. Her playful side, long suppressed by years of solitary mourning, emerging in joyful rolls through wildflower patches and bursts of speed chasing fluttering moths. Adopting Buddy, a timid young mutt from the shelter with a history of abandonment, tested the boundaries of her protective instincts at first, initial low growls giving way to maternal licks and shared naps. Her guidance teaching me volumes about patience and the healing power of second chances, mirroring how she'd rebuilt her life after Daniel's loss. Summer unfolded in lazy, sun-soaked picnics by the pond's edge, Luna splashing knee-deep with Buddy in tow, their joyful barks filling the air with laughter that chased away the last shadows of my isolation, while Daniel's daughter made recurring visits gifting Luna a custom collar engraved Shadow and Luna Eternal Pack, their interactions bridging the chasm of years with stories of puppy dreams and lost fathers. Through every trial that followed, steep vet bills for Luna's emerging arthritis that strained my modest savings during a tense school budget season, or the stress of lesson plans amid administrative pressures, she remained my unwavering anchor, her blue eyes locking onto mine with a steadiness that conveyed, "We're in this together," much like real-world examples from service dog programs where huskies assist in emotional support roles, their intuitive bonds fostering forgiveness and resilience in handlers facing adversity. Reflections deepened during twilight trails winding through the grove, where I'd ponder aloud how loyalty isn't about clinging to the past unyieldingly. It's about carrying its lessons forward with kindness and openness. Luna's steady trot beside me a living affirmation of that truth. These days, with the cycle of seasons turning once more, and Luna's steps measured but content, her spirit as vibrant as ever in quieter ways, our shared history endures as a beacon. That fateful barking uncovered not just a hidden tragedy, but the profound depths of connection, leaving behind a legacy of warmth from unbreakable love that whispers of hope's quiet, persistent return.